you see it on your end? Okay, it shows live on my end now. So let me refresh this and maybe there should be a bit of a delay, so that could also be it. Yeah, we're live. Sweet. Let me mute this. Awesome. Okay, so a little bit of an interesting start there, but hello everybody. Thank you guys for stopping by. This is Maker's Minute episode 2. This is a podcast that I started last month with episode 1 with Chuck from Filament Friday, and the point of this podcast was to have some of my friends in the Maker community, as well as some new people that I've been watching in the 3D printing, CNC, laser community, really all things making. And on this episode, I've got my buddy Chris Riley from Chris's Basement, who I'm sure a lot of you guys know. If you don't, he is an awesome guy that I met a few years ago, and he does weekly, it feels almost daily or bi-daily content on YouTube. Lots of crazy long, insane builds and live streams. He's very, very knowledgeable with the technical side of 3D printing and the firmware side of things. And I certainly will link to his channel in the description of the video, so that way you guys can find out if you're not already following. But if you want to say hello, Chris, to everybody. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I would say that I know that Chuck's channel has majorly focused on getting people into 3D printing and helping them be successful. And certainly I know that you've played a big role in troubleshooting. It's funny because we did a quick little test run on Saturday to make sure everything was working well. And we talked about how, you do your best to answer just about everyone and help them out. And literally just after that, I hopped on Twitter and saw that you had responded to somebody. I think he had a photo of a Benchy and, was asking about what was going on, and you were already trying to troubleshoot it. So yeah, he's a huge asset excuse me, to the community. And certainly if you're looking to get into 3D printing, or you're looking to fine-tune profiles, or looking really for to better your 3D printing experience, Chris is a super awesome guy that's got tons of content and is always here to help. So again, thank you so much for joining. And for those of you that are we're gonna kind of do a similar format to the last stream, which was basically we'll talk for quite a bit here. Like, I don't want to make the stream too long. I was thinking roughly about an hour is kind of what the first one went. So we'll chat for a bit, and then the end of the stream will be kind of like a Q&A for any questions that you might have for myself or for Chris. We'll kind of go over that. And the last... Uh-oh. That's not good. Let's see. No audio from Chris's mic. Say something? Yeah, you've got audio coming through here. That's strange. It doesn't look that's so weird. Let's see. Yeah, your audio shows on. Let's see, desktop audio. It's weird. I see your Skype here, and the volume shows all the way up. Let's do... Let me try this. Audios. Let me try something here. Let me try swapping this and going here. All right. Let's see, settings. Say something now. No, I don't think so. Device should be going through headphones. Done. That's just true. Let me know, guys, if you can hear him now, because I did change it up to desktop audio. So let's see. There's gonna be like a 15-second delay, so we'll see. that makes me sad. Thank you for seeing that, because I don't know how long it would have been until I caught that. Yeah, can you guys hear him now? I definitely switched it over to a different audio stream that should be coming through now. No, still nothing. That's so bizarre. Interesting. Mm-mm-mm. Let's see. Saying not a. It's so weird. I can try to call again, but I don't feel like that's it. Yeah, it's bizarre. Mm-mm-mm. Okay. Let's try this. Desktop audio. All right. Let's try putting you through both of these. All right. Let's try. I did change up something here, so let's try that again. If for some reason that does not work, then maybe a reboot is necessary.
Give it a shot. Can
Yeah.
anybody in the chat here?
Testing 1 2 3, Chris. Testing 1 2 3.
That's right. Calling all stream people.
It's funny with the delay though too, because you have to wait. Chris needs to stand to make his voice work.
I'm starting a new rule. I don't stand after 9 o'clock.
Yeah. So you guys still are not hearing Chris, period? I hardly recognize him not standing. That's funny. Oh, wait, audio? Oh, sick. Does it sound good? Let me know if it sounds like good enough or if you hear him twice, because I have two audio things turned on because I wasn't sure which one. Okay. Well,
okay.
I'm gonna restart this. Like at least you guys heard what I said about Chris. I'll let Chris say hello again. For the sake of the actual podcast, I will rip the audio. Oh, actually hadn't even started the. Okay, we're gonna do a complete run over again, Chris. I'm gonna just
no problem.
Start.
Let's do it.
Okay. All right, here we go. Round 2. The first one was a trial run. Okay. What's going on, guys? Welcome to Maker's Minute episode 2. As you can tell, we are still working out the kinks. Maker's Minute is a podcast that I started last month that the audio will be available after the fact on iTunes and on Google Play and on Spotify, which is awesome for those anyone that misses something or just wants to hear the audio. You can hear that after the fact. But the purpose of this podcast was to get awesome creators together and kind of highlight some people in the community, buddies of mine that are doing cool things with 3D printing and CNCing and lasers, and people that I kind of watch or people that I discover. And yeah, I figured it'd be a really cool place to maybe get to know a little bit more about myself and the other creator, as well as maybe share some tips and tricks and things like that. So on the stream here, we have the awesome Chris Riley, who was super cool to come on episode 2. It's 9 o'clock where he's at on a Wednesday. So the fact that he is here and he's helping us out. But Chris Riley is an awesome guy. Most of you guys know, does a ton of things with 3D printing. The most insane, like one of the most insanely dedicated live stream people that I have met, just doing the most ridiculously long live streams. He has all sorts of awesome tutorials and tips and tricks regarding printer builds, profile tuning, firmware stuff, like all the above. So links will be down below to where you can find out more about his channel. If you are not following him, you absolutely should be. But again, I will let you say hello one more time here now that we can hear your beautiful voice, man.
Awesome. Well, yeah, now with audio, the same intro, but I'm glad to be here for starters. Like I was telling Daniel earlier, this is the second one of these. I'm proud to be on the second one following Chuck, because Chuck and I, we converse back and forth a little bit, and we kind of go after the same goal. But that most of you probably already know me, but I'm a YouTube content creator, pretty much strictly 3D printer related, lots of live streams, builds, good stuff like that, and I try to help out wherever I can.
So he's been awesome, is a super cool guy, and I'm again really thankful to have you on, man. So really excited. So yeah, I guess first and foremost, let's get right into it. When it comes to 3D printing, man, when and how and why did you get into 3D printing in the first place? This is something that I always like asking people, because it's always so different and unique, man. Why? How did you start on this journey?
Yeah, and we've probably gone over that half a dozen times or so. But So I've always been kind of into making and things like that. I do building, whether it be, sheds or welding or, working on cars, whatever. So I've always been really hands-on. I spent most of my high school career in shop. So, but I was already on YouTube. So for my work, for my career has been always in IT. And
Gotcha.
I did a lot of stuff early on with a lot of the structure for cloud computing and things like that when it became kind of open source. So I was already on YouTube doing more like reference for open source cloud computing.
Okay.
And then one of my buddies, and he was a content creator at one time. He hasn't done much lately. He came with me to Murph a couple of years ago. Colin, he has a YouTube channel. He was 3D printing. He had like a Dremel, one of the early Dremel models or something like that. And I was way into doing something else at that time. So he's like, you should really get into 3D printing. It's up your alley. And I'm like, nah. I don't really know anything that I want to 3D print.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, no, you should totally do it. And he showed me some of the stuff he made. And then I had this idea, and I really don't remember what it was, but I needed a fix. And I was like, well, I could get into CAD because I'd done a little bit of it previously. I'll draw it, I'll send it over to Colin, he'll print it for me,
Yeah.
and then I'll have this thing. And then when I got it, of course it didn't work because I designed it and, it was off or whatever. It didn't work.
Uh-huh.
But then when I got to hold it in my hand, I was like, okay, now I need one of these things.
That's awesome.
So we actually got together. My wife was out of town, so we got together. We bought like the cheapest eBay 3D printer kit that we could find. We both got one,
Uh-huh.
and we spent like 2 full days building it.
Yep.
And it was one of these acrylic Prusa deals. It was like 2016 or something like that when I first got that kit.
ANET
So
or
we
pre ANET A8?
Oh yeah, way before the ANET
Okay.
explosion or Creality existed or anything like that.
Okay.
But yeah, so I built it and then just started, tinkering from there, trying to get a decent print, and then it just started to escalate. And I was right when I started getting into PETG. I was like, well, I ABS, I got on a closure. I'm printing ABS, it's okay, but just for small parts, and there's struggle there.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
PETG started to get kind of popular and a little bit more consistent. So I went to that, and I just struggled flat out. I don't even remember what brand it was, but
Yeah.
it was pretty difficult. So when that came, then I ordered a PruSub Mark II. It had just come out.
Nice.
And so I waited like 8 weeks for that or whatever. But as soon as I got that, then things just exploded.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, it was just crazy after that. So, and then I just decided to start making videos for reference, basically,
Yeah.
well, this is how I did this. And then now here I am years later,
That's insane.
making a video a week. So
That's crazy, man. That's you did really well getting a Prusa as your second machine, man. I'm sure like going from a super cheap eBay kit to that was like just a night and day difference of experience. You're probably like, where's all this struggle at? Like where what?
absolutely. And I'm that kind of person. It going to the Mark II, it was like that. This is just too easy. Now what do I do?
Yeah.
And then when the Mark III came out, I was beside myself that it had a filament sensor and all these fancy stepper motor features, and it would do all this stuff for you. I was like, this is just way too. You need to struggle to get this done.
Yep.
So but now I've got like 3 Mark IIIs, and they sit here and print all day. It's just I don't know what I'd do without them. So
that's awesome. I still, believe it or not, to this day have never owned a Prusa machine, man.
Really,
which is insane because like I've been printing for now roughly 6 years, and I've had dozens of machines go through my hands and test them out and use them or whatever, and I've been this close to pulling the trigger on one multiple times just because like partially all the hype and just I want to see it for myself. Like I just want to experience it, but it's tough for me just because I've got a lot of machines, and it's very rare, if ever, that I'm like, man, like the Prusa can do this one thing that my machine can't do. Like just about everything. Like my machines have been tinkered and modded with and upgraded enough to where they can do most of those things, but I still like I'd be lying if I said that I hadn't gone around and around. And then with the release of the mini, man, I'm like, oh, it's finally at like a price point where like my excuses are running super low. You know, like I can't say it's too expensive anymore because it's here we are. It's almost in like Chinese printer prices. You know, it's
Right.
so. So yeah, we'll see, but yeah, I'm sure. Do you still have your original that acrylic printer in some variation or no?
I do. I do. I still got it.
Do you?
I haven't tried to print on it in a long time, but I mean, this thing didn't even have part cooling. You know, it was pretty much just it was designed to do ABS not very well,
Gotcha.
basically. You know,
Yeah.
but like ABS at an extremely low temperature for ABS, even at that, because you know it was a Teflon lined hot end and all that. But
Yeah.
at that time, you know, like just right when they brought out the Mark II,
Uh huh.
I mean, you had not a lot. You could go real cheap. Somebody
Yep.
that tried to clone a Mark One, you know,
Yep.
like I had, or you could go, it like Folgertech FT5 was a big thing. You
That
know,
was
that was
my.
like the biggest, cheapest one you could get,
Yep. That
right?
was
And
my
then
my first kit.
really
Yeah,
nice.
that was my first kit, man. And the reason why was because of the word you used was acrylic. I looked online, like I did a ton of research after the DaVinci 1.0 and like I had to mod the crap out of that, which I talked on the episode with Chuck heavily about that. But after that, I was determined. I said, you know what? No, I want to build one from the ground up because I don't want to be fearful of if something goes wrong, what do I do? You know, I want to understand the mechanics of how it all works. And I had over the previous years gotten really into tinkering with like hardware hacking on video game consoles, like mostly aesthetic stuff, some mod chips, and so you know I felt a little more comfortable and was a little less scared of breaking things. But I really wanted to understand it, and like you said at the time. Before all the Creality stuff and before ANETs and before you know anything else that's out there now, the one of the few ones that I saw was the Folgertech FT5, which was a 2020 aluminum based machine. I still have it in the storage unit. It looks like hell, dude. Like it's got. I wish I could kept track, but it's got thousands on thousands of hours, and that was my first long live stream build. I think it took me about 12 or 13 hours. There was missing nuts from the build. I almost killed myself because I was it was probably and like I'm sure you've done silly stuff on stream. We've kind of talked about that, but dude, 12 hours into my stream or 11 hours, something like around there. I'm down, like the hardware's done, it's just the final wiring, and that's where I should have probably called it quits, like not knowing a lot about what I was doing and deciding to do wiring when I was tired. I had it plugged in and thought it was unplugged, and I crossed the mains, dude. That was one of the dumbest things I've done, like period, you know, in my tinkering, and I did it on stream. It's actually the video is still out there. You just see me like bent over, and then it looks like the 4th of July, and I'm like I like fall back and like hold my heart a little bit, and I think shortly after that I ended the stream, and luckily I don't think I fried the board. Maybe I did. It was just the Ramps Arduino at the time, but it scared the shit out of me, dude. And that's kind of the point where I learned. And after that, I did the streams if I was building something like 4 hours, 5 hours, and after that, like I call it quits. I'll do a part 2. I wasn't afraid to do a part 2 anymore after that, you know, because I was like,
Yeah.
this is life and death maybe here that we're talking about, you know. So, but yeah, that's funny that you mentioned the Folgertech FT5 because when I believe Folgertech is still very much so around, right? You built one of their massive.
Yeah. I've got a couple of Folgertechs. I've got their Mega i3, which is kind of their CR10 ish
Okay.
type deal, and then I've got the FT6, which is the 720
Monster.
by 350.
That's
Yeah.
the monster, man. Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
when I saw you building that. I was a little jealous, man, because that was one of the first really big machines that I saw. And in all reality, like I didn't necessarily have a use case for it, like something that big. But the idea of okay, this is cool, but like that's cool, you know.
Absolutely.
So, but yeah, that's rad. And definitely when I hear people. Occasionally like at work or wherever talking and they're like, oh yeah, I got a Folgertech, I'm like, oh shit, like it's like instantly trip down memory lane for me, you know.
Yep.
So is your original machine, is it still in printable condition, or is it more just there as it's like a token of where you started?
I think it could be really easily. I've actually told with the fact of going backwards and going, okay, well, I haven't used this since 2017. What does it look like? Where did I leave it? And making a video on it. You know, like use now what I know to try
It's
to make it something worthwhile.
Uh-huh.
I thought that might be kind of some interesting content because well, just for instance, that machine just had 8 millimeter threaded rods for Z screws, you know,
Yeah. Oh
and
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
they were not straight. They
Yep.
weren't actual lead screws. They were just threaded rod, and they
Right.
weren't
Yep.
straight at all. But just going through, because I knew one person that did 3D printing at that time, so I could compare my prints to theirs, and I just kind of, this doesn't look right. But I remember the aha moment when I looked at the print and just kind of held it up, and I realized it lined up with that lead screw, the Z banding.
Got you.
And then I just had this, aha moment
Yeah.
try to
Moment
try
of
to
clarity.
disconnect it
Uh
from
huh.
those rods, and
Uh
it
huh.
smoothed everything out. It made it like 100% better. So just going through all of those iterations and taking my knowledge now and putting it towards that just to see what came out like, it might still be a total pile of crap. I don't know when I got
Yeah.
done, but it might be worth giving it a
It'd
shot.
be I think it
So,
would be a fun project if nothing less, or like a fun just experiment. Let's just see, like, you've had 3 years now of, I would say, pretty heavy experience, playing around with these machines, and let's see, like,
yeah,
Chris that has this, like, basically, like with a stick almost, like, poking this caveman, like, because that's how I was, I'm like, what is it, like,
yeah,
oh, it's homing, like, this is great, like, what's happening, and seeing now if you can figure out, like, aha, like, this is a simple solution,
yeah.
that's pretty cool, man. That actually, that would be pretty fun. I'd be curious to see, like, and also just kind of how far, like, things that 3 years ago were acceptable from a budget machine compared to, like, the standard now. It has evolved so much what we expect from a $200 to $300 machine, man.
Oh yeah, man. I mean, just think about it, extruders. We had the old Mark 8 on everything.
Yep.
That was just a nightmare most of the time.
Which was
Uh,
based off of the Mark 8, if I'm not mistaken. It's based off, like, old MakerBot style extruder, right?
right. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just a sandwich motor style with a
Yep.
heatsink on it that never works, and
Yep.
it's just ridiculous. But we talk about it. We've talked about it a lot. But technology, just drivers. Everything had A4988 on it.
Yep.
This old noisy Polulu clone Allegro chip.
Yep.
So I mean, just now it's gotten completely crazy. But when you live in it, you don't realize how far you've come. But
Oh
going
yeah.
back like that, that
Oh
that might be
yeah.
kind of interesting.
We sometimes, because yeah, I guess most of the machines that I currently use are, like, relatively, like, more present, like Crealities and, like, a Sidewinder and stuff like that. And so there was a, what the hell did we turn on? We turned on at work the other day an old machine. It might have been like an older, like, Robo R1 or something like that, man. And, like, dude, the steppers, man, like, it's, you hear it printing, and it's funny because, like, for me, since I'd been in it so long, even before here, when I was living with my buddy for a few years, which would have been probably like 4-ish years ago, I had probably 4 or 5 printers going a lot, like a ton, and I slept in the same room, like not not 4 feet away from them. I'm they're printing peacefully, and I'm just, like, sitting there sleeping, happy as could be. But my buddy and his wife would come down the hall and be like, dude, how are you able to sleep? It sounds like a small, like, sweatshop in there, dude. Like, what do you have going on? And for me, though, it became like white noise. But when I hear anybody now see a printer, like, oh, it's kind of loud, I'm like, you have no idea. You think that's loud? Like, this is nothing. This is beautiful music compared to the crazy, this high pitched sounds. But it was kind of cool. I was a huge fan of when they made it where there was G code that could play songs. Like, I did a video a long time ago. It was like the Star Wars, like, one of the theme songs from, and I know that. Did you see Make Anything did a Pokemon battle video?
No, I don't think I've
Oh,
seen that
it's
one.
epic, dude. He's got it's like the Anycubic i3 Mega, and he's painted it pink, and it's like, it looks like Jigglypuff. And then he's got another printer, and it's got googly eyes. He's got another printer that looks like another Pokemon with googly eyes, and they're playing the Pokemon battle music to each other. It's epic, man. Like, I saw that and was just like, oh, thank God. Like, this is why we need noisy steppers so that we can do Pokemon theme songs or something like that. So.
Yeah,
It's
that sounds that's right up his alley too, man. He
yeah.
does some of the most creative stuff out there.
Oh yeah, he's insane, man. Like, I found him through not 3D printed related things. I think initially it was like his pendulum, like his glow in the dark pendulum video, which, like, went crazy, like crazy viral on it. And I was just a huge fan. And then I saw he got into 3D printing, and One thing that he did that was very unique to me was like his level of like detail in his projects to me were just crazy, you know, the
Yeah,
creativity and stuff like
definitely.
that. It was just absolutely bonkers. But okay, so that was how you got into 3D printing. What would you say? Would you say the Prusa? Okay, so let's say what not your best printer performance wise. What is your favorite printer to play around with? Like what do you enjoy printing with? If it is a Prusa, that's fine. But like I know you got a lot of machines that you played around with too. So what is it that you just enjoy printing with?
Yeah, well, so Bruce is kind of like a Honda or something to me.
Okay.
You know, man, it really gets the job done, but it doesn't have the Jaguar I'll break down on you in the middle of nowhere aspect to it.
Yep.
You know, so I mean, I love it. It works great. They are kind of pricey for what they are, and say what you want about Prusa, you can usually get them out of the box, and they're going to work pretty good. You
Yeah.
know, so
Sure.
if I got to do a project, I got to get something done. Fire up the Prusas, and we'll call it a day. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'll print five at once and go for it. But the really when I decided to do, I followed along with Tom. Tom did the Prusa clone, the Dolly build out of
Oh
wood.
yes, yes, I
Yeah.
remember that.
So
Yep.
I have one of those that I call Log,
Yeah,
and
I've seen that.
it has been through so much. And I mean, I'm bringing it to Murph, so you will see
That's
just how many
sick.
holes I've drilled in it and how crooked it actually is.
Uh-huh.
But that's my favorite thing to play with. You know, it's like everybody asks me, well, how many times have you taken it apart? And I can honestly say I've had it apart more than I've done prints on it.
That's
But man,
insane.
you can still throw it together and it prints great.
That's
It
awesome,
really
man.
does. For something that's made out of wood that's not straight at all,
Yeah.
it really does turn out a pretty nice print. So that's my favorite thing to play with,
I,
definitely.
I'm excited to see it because I've seen videos and snippets of you pulling it out and talking about the log printer and like aesthetically I will say not the prettiest machine I've ever seen. On you know what I'm
Absolutely
saying?
not.
But that's awesome that you've got this kind of like project that is when how long ago did you build it? Like when did you initially start putting it together?
It was sometime around the same time that I got a Mark II. So summer, maybe 2017, like
Okay.
summer 2017, maybe.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of old faithful. Like this is an older project that you've had through the years.
Yeah, yeah, and it's been through so many different iterations. Like I started out with like an aluminum bed and one of the original red PCBs, you know, for the heated
Oh
bed.
yeah,
And
oh
so
yeah, yep. That was
yeah, I
OG.
mean,
That's what my
I
folder
had a
tech
print
had.
and Z plate, and I mean, I've had so many different things. Like I even started out with like 5 millimeter threaded rods for Z rods. I
Jeez,
mean,
man,
it was just it's been through everything.
that's
So
awesome. That's super cool, man. Really quick, I want to say Mod Shop tuned in and tipped $5. Thank you very much, Mod Shop. Mod Shop's been a buddy of mine through like video game modding back in the day, so we go way back. How's it going, man?
that's
Uh,
awesome.
um, that is awesome. What I will say that there's been a few times and like I wanted to segue a bit more later on, or maybe in a bit here, into the tool changer that you got from E3D. But it sounds like the log printer for you has almost kind of been what I've been looking for as like almost a platform just to throw things on and play around with and see how it works and see what happens. You know, like I
Right.
mean, there's all sorts of like new hot ends or extruders or just different things I want to screw around with. But on a lot of the machines, like when I get them up and they're at a point where they work really well, I'm like, like if it ain't broke, don't fix it, you know. But
Yep.
like, but I used to be much more like, okay, like let's swap it out and let's try it out. But I've definitely like been kind of wanting a platform, and I know you talked about mentioned Tom and his Prusa like clone he made, but he also showed a long time ago. It's probably some years now, but he had kind of like a beta platform, which was basically like this machine that was, just had aluminum extrusions and a lot of mounting points and stuff like that. And
Right.
that seems really cool to me. Just to like, let's get this thing, let's hop it on really quickly. You know that your machine's rigid, just to kind of play around with some things. But yeah, that's exciting. I'm excited to see the log in person, man, in all of its glory.
Yeah, yeah. The whole test bed idea of a 3D printer really isn't as easy as you think it would be.
Hmm.
I mean, you can set out to try to say, okay, this is going to be semi-modular, and I can switch these parts out, or I can switch out the main board. But you're always going to run into something that you're not compatible with, so you're going to end up with some sort of spaghetti at some point.
Yeah.
I do a lot of different main boards. I lug has probably had a dozen different ones on it, but you're never going to get that same kind of configuration. So you end up with a lot of patchwork.
Gotcha.
Um, Getting something that you could test, hot ends and extruders and and boards and whatever. It's quite the chore. So that would be like the ultimate goal, and we could kind of segue into tool changer, but that would be some of its purpose as well.
Yeah, I that's one thing. It's funny because there was one point. So I think it was probably more around the time when I first found your channel, and which was like a while before Murph of 2018. And at that point, I felt when I was watching your videos, I was like, cool, like I know quite a bit about Marlin, and I know quite a bit about like the wiring and aspect of things, and using like if I remember correctly at the time, you were a big proponent of the Ramps Arduino setup, man. Like I feel yeah. So I remember seeing that and was like, cool, like another guy that like is gets the boards and is kind of like on the same page with me. But then since then, like I've watched tons of boards come out. I've watched like Smoothie with their Smoothie board. I've watched like Duet with their RepRap firmware and their board. I've watched like other like I've got I guess the Lurge board, which I've had forever. But there's been all sorts of like the MKS Gen L boards and like all these different boards. And I have not played around with any of them really, which makes me sad. It's been one of those things where I've really been intrigued, and I don't know, a combination of time and just it's been working really well for me. I will say that like I have my ANET A8 to AM or ANET AM8 conversion, which I never finished. This is an ongoing this is a story of my life, dude. You start a project and then like God, it's in 3 years, dude. But it's still sitting here. And at the time, originally I'd purchased a Ramps Arduino for it, but it almost seems like that would be like archaic to throw in there at this point,
Right.
And so that did get me looking at some stuff, but yeah, you certainly have had a ton of experience. What like if you could just list off a handful, like what are some of the boards that you played around with, man, over the last couple of years here?
Oh man, so ramps, the ramp shield Arduino, of course, that was kind of the staple of everything. But then we started to get into, I mean, not chronologically, but like you'd start to see a lot of the Melzy boards that are up built in all in one with the the trim pots and the drivers and all that stuff all on the same one. And then you started to see those two hybrid. You started to see some of the ramps qualities, replaceable steppers, stuff like that, but you still had it made. A lot of it was still integrated on the board, but you're still talking about 2560 or 2560 processors at that time.
The Arduino based, right? The like
right. That's still the old Mega, the Mega processor. And that was kind of how things went. There was a couple of companies out there that started to jump into that same combo, the MKS boards, 1.3, 1.4. You started to see that come on the scene, and I've had quite a few of those. And that was kind of the affordable go-to there for a while because you could still swap out different drivers if you wanted to, really, but there was only a handful at the time that you could really get a hold of.
Oh, yeah.
And then, like, after you said, most of the time you just see stuff like that, unless you went high-end, and because Ultra Machine they were making the Rambo board and the Mini Rambo, and they had a couple of other ones, which they also brought out some high-end stuff. Arkham boards, but then you had the other side of the house with Smoothie. Smoothie's been around a long time with Do boards and things like that. So, I mean, one of everything: a Duet Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi 2, Maestro. I couldn't even tell you how many I've been through. So
that's insane, man. Yeah, out of your experience in playing around with the various firmwares, which I won't ask which is your favorite because I don't think that's fair. I think there's probably different elements, but which do you feel is the easiest to use from what you've seen?
As far as boards goes?
No, as far as messing around and actually modifying the firmware. And I'm not saying easy as in like the sense where on a lot of the like Smoothie you just do it on the SD card versus having to like flash it like we had to do with Marlin. But like which one do you think as far as a user that doesn't really know what they're doing can go in and modify? I feel like in my head, if I were to answer that, I'd probably think Marlin still because of the fact that it's been so widely used. The documentation's probably way better. But is that accurate?
So now in 2020, if somebody was getting into it new, the way that Duet has gone with RipRap, they've kind of commandeered it and made it their own. You're really just dealing with a code base that's been compiled version to version. They hand you that, you put it on the board, and then you edit config files with G code commands to control the rest. I think if you were a new user, that's probably the easiest one to manipulate nowadays.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because you're not actually dealing with compiling code.
Yeah.
You're just updating a handful of commands and going for it. Um, I am always going to be partial to Marlin,
Yeah.
but you're still compiling it. You know, you're going in, you're tweaking the code, you're putting it back together. You're dealing with, you know, if you don't get your syntax right, if you don't know anything about coding,
Mm-hmm.
you're dealing with blow-ups that, well, this doesn't go with this. You know, why doesn't it compile anymore?
Yep.
And you don't have that real aspect of saving the firmware, right? So I got firmware on a board. I don't really want to get rid of that, but I'd like to try something else. Well, if you're going Marlin, you're going to blow it away, and you're never going
Gotcha.
to have that copy again. Duet, you can kind of preserve some of that.
What is there? There's not currently a way to read that data back, right? You can't dump.
Not easily.
Gotcha.
As far as saving it off, I'm sure there's somebody that's a lot more into the electronics than I am that could figure it out. But
Yeah.
not an easy way.
Gotcha. And again, since and it's actually hilarious. So because you did a video on the same board I just installed into my Ender today that you uploaded today, which is it's the Big Tree Tech 1.2. It's the
The mini board.
yeah, which is funny
Yep.
because this is my first it's running and I'm actually working on a video, so I saw that, and that's my first dive with really Marlin 2.0 period. But since I've been out of it, with Marlin 2.0, can it be updated via SD card, or is it still flashed through like Arduino IDE?
So it's you still have to compile if you're using the hardware abstraction layer for 32-bit. You still have to compile it into some sort of bin file and
Okay,
then throw it on the SD card and reboot
got
basically.
you. Okay,
But most of the boards will recycle that file and then reload. So you still have to have some sort of mechanism to load that. Where Duet, if you can upgrade the firmware on the Duet, but it comes as a package.
got you.
They say, okay, here it is. You upload that, and then it will still work with your personal configuration.
But okay, so on the Marlin 2.0 based boards though, if you've got that bin file and it's already taken what it needs to from it, and you remove the SD card, it would boot fine, right? Like the data is saved onto the board.
Right.
But that's not is that the case though with all the other firmwares, or no? If you were to remove it, it's reading it in real time every time it boots.
So if pretty much like on the actual firmware piece, it is living on a chip on the board.
Okay, all right.
But like with Duet, they have a web interface that lives on the card.
Okay,
So like if you pulled the card, you wouldn't be able to access the web interface. The board would probably still work just fine, but
got you. Okay,
it kind of varies from. I'm not exactly sure how Smoothie does it. I don't remember. It's been a long time since I flashed that, but yeah, a lot of it still lives on the chip on the board, but some of the aspects and some of the other stuff live on that card.
okay, got you. Okay, so that makes sense. That's kind of what I thought. It seemed weird to me. I mean, I did. From everything that I've seen, I understood that to rewrite a lot of the I've seen with Smoothie, it was a Smoothie. So at the office they use a lot of PanuCat boards, which are a lot of his are Smoothie based,
Yep.
and so I do know that every time I need to update something, I believe I usually see him just update something on the card and then pop it back in, or maybe they even do it some of it via just sending commands. Again, I haven't played around with it too much, but. That's interesting to know. Okay, so question for you then. So coming from someone like me who's primarily used Marlin 1, version 1, that's what I've played around with for so long, and seeing this guy that says 2.0, what are things that what's exciting? From someone that doesn't know Marlin 2.0, what are things that are in development in your opinion? Not necessarily everything, but what are you excited about? What have you seen that's been going on in development that's really exciting for you, other than obviously 32-bit support as well?
Yeah, and 32-bit support really, for me, really doesn't do anything. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's awesome. We have the processing power. You know, the ceiling is so much higher now for things for memory and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. But for most users, with their Ender 3 or whatever, they're not going to be at a blistering speed where they need to process it that fast.
Yeah.
So that really doesn't concern me as much as the memory available for features. And 2 dot the big thing from 1 dot to 2 dot, of course, is how many more boards it's going to support. And we've seen such an explosion with boards, especially with Big Tree Tech bringing out all these different affordable lines of boards. You
Awesome,
know,
man.
some good, some bad. You know,
Yeah.
they of course they're going to have some failures, but
Yeah.
man, you can get your hands on 32-bit cheap now. And Marlin has just gone through and supported everything. You know, those guys, they have the, for all the boards that they mean it, man. They
That's
will
awesome.
support everything. But with 2.0, because we're able to use the 32-bit processors, you start to get a bigger feature set. Like guys that developed Linear Advance 1.5, that's huge. Linear Advance, just the I don't know what you want to call it. It's not necessarily volumetric pressure relief or however you want to say that. Uh, that can sometimes just save a print. So if you're seeing inconsistencies in extrusion, try to tune in Linear Advance and run with it just to see how big a difference it's going to make. Because I mean it's huge. Uh,
I,
but
I've got a bit of a like almost embarrassing confession. I don't know what I've seen it and heard of it. I don't know what it is. What is that for someone that just doesn't know like linear advance? What does that do for your machine? Based off what you said, it sounds like it's some kind of to do with the motors as far as regulation or something like that. What does that mean, linear advance?
yeah, so in a nutshell, it's kind of hard to explain, but basically what you're attempting to do is forecast your extrusion needs with linear advance. So when you're getting ready to make an acceleration change, when you're decelerating or accelerating, linear advance is going to try to get on top of that to make sure that you have enough plastic to lay down for that. Instead of it ramping up slow, like using jerk or junction deviation now, linear advance is going to try to forecast some of that and enable you to get around that tight corner or to go a little bit faster or to reduce your retraction, because it's
Interesting.
trying to monitor that extruder motor a little bit.
What does the calibration, because you said like try to like what does it look like to get that set up if that's something that you wanted to play around with other
Yeah,
than
so
obviously enabling it in firmware.
in Marlin they actually give you a test grid, and basically you can go out to their website, set up your parameters for your printer. It will dump you out a G code, and then you can run that G code, and it will let you stair step different settings for linear advance. You can run it from off all the way to whatever the maximum setting is you want, and it's going to print lines out, and it's going to go from slow to fast to slow, and then it will show you the most consistent one to be able to enable that, so you can just kind of go with that setting and then try it out on your model.
What so for the printer or printers that you played around with that with, um do you have that enabled all the time like on a couple of machines?
Yeah, so like all the Prusa machines now, they have 1.0 linear advance. There's a newer version that
Mm-hmm.
I think they're getting ready to put out. They all have linear advance on them by default. Even the Mark II, they went back and updated that firmware with linear advance.
Cool.
Log always runs with linear advance. Now, a lot of the Creality machines and stuff, you don't see that come on stock yet.
Uh-huh.
But I think they'll probably get there. It's not. It, it would benefit a Bowden style printer more, but it's going to be a lot harder to configure.
Gotcha.
Your extruder is going to have a meltdown trying to keep up with that tube and all the slack in it. But
Gotcha.
yeah, I mean anything that you print really fast with, you can really improve with linear advance.
Awesome. And the main thing it's improving is the print quality or the like structural the
Yeah,
integrity of the part.
consistency,
Okay.
just
Gotcha.
yeah, flat all the way around. Yeah, you don't end up with really wide lines in certain, changing in spots and things like that. It's just the consistency difference it's incredible.
Um, so totally random question I just thought of right now. So when I'm doing when you're talking about that, when I'm 3D printing and primarily the materials I'm using on my day to day is just PLA and PETG still. Like it's PLA for pretty much whatever, PETG if it needs a little bit more strength or temperature resistance. It's primarily my two go tos. When it comes to speeds with PLA, what's your standard like millimeters a second like for just a basic print? Because mine like it's probably like for infill like the quickest speeds I'm going to like 50 to 60 millimeters a second. I'm not going very fast in general. Is that
Yeah.
very south of you or is that about the ballpark of what you're printing when you're doing a normal print?
Yeah, I mean, on an average machine, infill a lot of times will be max speed around 60 millimeters a second, something like that. But the problem is with PLA, and most of the slicers that you run into, if you're printing PLA, you're most of the time going to have auto cooling on.
Yeah.
And if auto cooling's on, all bets are off.
Gotcha.
So it's going to decide. It's going to put you down to 30. I mean, it's going to do whatever it feels like.
By auto cooling, you mean to have it where a certain layer takes a certain amount of time, so that way it's able to cool. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So it's going to make pretty much all the decisions for you at that point, depending on how you have it set up.
Gotcha.
But
Okay.
like ABS, that's more of a no holds barred, because that is what it is,
Yeah.
at that point. But some of the machines that I have, if you're running linear vents, you can print infill at like 200 millimeters a second pretty easy,
Jeez.
and
That's
it's
insane.
moving.
That's
Yeah,
insane, man.
but that's also, you have to take into account too. That's a straight line. That's grid,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that's a straight line. Don't have to worry about any corners, and that's an 8-bit board.
Gotcha.
So I mean, it is possible, but you have to be in the right scenario. But for most, I mean, if you want it to turn out halfway decent, 60 millimeters a second is still pretty good on most machines. Running
Yeah.
PLA.
Okay. Okay. I was just curious because like I don't know. Like I guess it's funny. I mean, I work with a ton of people at 3D print, but I don't know that I really asked that question. And when you're talking about the linear advance and just print settings, I was like, okay, I'm just curious what you do. Okay, out of curiosity, when you're talking about speed, and you said you've got a machine that you've seen that you've got that can do that. What is your Ferrari machine, man? Like, if you got a machine that just like whipping through stuff, what is it? The log or no?
No, it's a little bit too flaky for things like
Uh huh.
that. What is a fast machine? I've only had a handful of deltas,
Yeah.
and you can whip out a print pretty quick, but most of all my deltas are pretty low end, so I really wouldn't consider that.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the fastest machine I have is one of the Prusa Mark IIs.
Okay.
It will turn out a print pretty fast, probably faster than any of my other machines, and that's. I have a lot of other machines that I haven't tuned, so like a drop bed machine like the SK Go or something like that, a hypercube of some type. You
Oh
could
yeah.
probably smoke an i3 machine if you
Yeah.
wanted to tune it in. But again, if I'm just in a pinch, I have these already set up. I just hit it and it goes.
It's
So
going. That's awesome. Um, okay, I want to get into the tool changer. What time? What's on? What time is it? All right, all right. So I think we've been on for like maybe 35 minutes because the first 10 minutes were me realizing that you have no audio at all. Okay, so one other question that I thought would be kind of fun to ask. So you've done a lot of projects. Like I've seen, like even you did a little project where it's like a little guy where you can put like a paper clip and it like eats it, or like so you've
Yeah.
done some pretty fun little projects.
Yeah.
If you had to pick one project that you think was just man, that was a fun project, or so, like kind of like a funnest project, what do you think that would be?
As far as fun and challenging, I mean, all wrapped into one, and
Yeah.
and one that I kind of wanted to stop doing, but then I kind of want to go back to it. Just all in all, I'm going to say the hang printer.
Got you. Okay.
Just the whole cycle of that. Nobody really had any information on it.
Oh, yeah.
It was just I got to actually talk to Torbjorn, who created it, and like, hey, it's doing this or it's doing this, and he would kind of help me walk through. And then I printed a full size bar stool,
It's insane,
and
man.
I mean
So
it was so challenging. You were calibrating with a measuring tape, I mean but I wanted to keep going. I did, but I wanted to go on to something else as
Yeah.
well, and it took up so much room. I mean, you couldn't even
it's
walk
huge.
through here,
It's huge, man.
Yeah, so I that's a love-hate relationship right there. But
How long was the project from when you decided, okay, I'm ordering the first part for it, to okay, I'm walking away from this now? Was it over a course of a couple months, or?
I would guess probably 6 months in all, because I actually did two versions. So I got into it for Hagenford version 2, which was a self-contained like thing. It was
Okay.
real heavy, had like 4 motors on it.
Yeah.
And then he decided to go to Hagenford version 3, which was all self-contained on the ceiling. So you kind of built it on a board and then screwed it to the ceiling.
Yep.
So I did both versions. And
insane.
it was probably 6 months or better before I finally hung it up and decided
Jeez,
that it was enough.
That's commitment, man. That's
Yeah.
6 months is a long time to go through something, and I'm sure there was a lot of points where you're like, hitting your head against the wall, like trying to figure out like, why is this not working? Like I've certainly had projects where, like, I mean, off the top of my head, I can't think of like ones that are just there that like I threw in the towel on. But I've certainly had projects where I'm just like, nope. I've given it my all. Like I don't know at this point. So the fact that on something that, again, a lot of the stuff I've done, like there's pretty good sources I can pull data from, or ask someone something similar, like, hey, like shine your light on me, like guide me to what I'm trying to do, or help me a bit. But yeah, on the Hang printer, like there's not a lot of data that I've seen on it, because one of the first few times I saw it was, I think it was in maybe Tom's like wrap up video for the Swedish meetup. Does that sound right?
Yeah, probably so.
Yeah, and I saw that and was like, what is this crazy thing? And the idea of like turning a room into a 3D printer, like that's madness, man. I'm coming from this little like this little Folger Tech FT5 or like my DaVinci, and I'm like, but you gotta think bigger, man. Like it's wild.
Right. Well, and that's what pulled me in, right? It's like I can print the size of this room when really you have kind of defined limitations, but just the idea of it, it's amazing.
Yeah, that's freaking awesome, man. Okay, so the Hang printer. Okay, so circling back, or not circling back, but let's talking a bit about your new shiny baby that you got. You picked up the E3D tool changer, which is awesome. First time I saw it in person was actually when I met you in person, was at Murph in 2018, and
yep.
I remember it was insane. Their booth was very close to our booth, and they were showing off like different things that were printed on it that contained multiple materials that I've never seen, like a nylon that was wrapped in like a TPU, or like crazy combinations. And then they were also showing off like how repeatable it was as far as the ability to grab and release, and the purging mechanism on it. So uber jealous. It's just the most like that. I mean, that is such a unique machine for starters. So that is so cool. Two, I would be lying. I have not gotten a chance to watch. I know that you did like all of it on stream, and I've seen some posts, and I know that like you posted one photo of benchies that were like the most spiderwebby insane benchies when you were doing the initial calibration, and you were like, well, it's a benchy, So
right.
I gather from at least the timestamps I've seen in that it was a pretty freaking involved build.
Yeah. So the build was pretty involved, but a lot of it was just because of repetition. You got 4 times the amount of everything.
Yeah.
The wiring with the breakout board and stuff. So the build was pretty involved, I have to say. But well done. They did a really good job at a lot of the pre-assembly. Like the motion system took up like 2 hours to do. I mean, and it was done.
That's awesome.
The belts were pre-tension and all that. So that was good.
That's cool.
The problem is there is a learning curve to it, and I'm not the most experienced duet person.
Yep.
But there's a lot of stuff that you kind of have to custom do yourself because of the design of the machine.
Yep.
Like you need to when it's picking up these tools and putting them away, and you want them to be primed the next time it comes back, but you don't want them to ooze like in the spiderweb deal.
Yep.
So you have to decide. Well, how much retraction should I do? Where do I need to put it? I'll have to force that retraction, because how am I going to line that up in the G code, right?
Yep.
Well, you can build a macro in Duet and get it to execute with a G code command. And it's just on and on and on. So there's a lot more programming than I thought there ever would be. Especially, and a lot of people comment on the price point.
Yeah.
It's like, well, why do you have to do so much? Because for that cost, why do you have to do so much work afterwards?
What is it? Is it over 2,000 or under 2,000?
No, it like out the door, shipped to me in the United States, it was 3,800. Yeah.
Damn.
So
yeah.
it was pricey, man.
Yep.
But this isn't something. It's not something consumer ready.
No.
I mean, it's not designed for that. It was never meant to be that. It was it was high end of high end, and only certain crazy people are going to want this thing, right?
He raises his hand slowly.
Yeah, right.
So,
and I don't even know how many they've sold, like around 500 or something like that. So
yeah, so I do want to say, for anyone that doesn't know, I'm sure most people that are very involved with 3D printing would know what this is, but I guess I didn't even mention. So, and correct me if I'm wrong. This is my understanding. The E3D tool changer is multiple things. One, it's a motion platform, which they sell as a standalone. They also have a full full kit version, which is what you went with, which has all of the aluminum. It's got the controller board, it's got the steppers, it's got their motion system. But what I understand it to be is like a testing slash prototyping slash making platform where there's you have your main head that can go around and grab these 4 tool heads, and they don't necessarily have to be 3D printers. Like essentially you can have like a 3D printer and a laser. A 3D printer, I saw they had at one show like a microscope that was going over and like doing a quick little thing. And you also, one really unique thing about it is since they're not attached to each other and like that, they can also be, if you do decide to have all 3D printers, you could have one that's rocking like carbon fiber nylon material with a 0.6. You could have one that's got like a 1.2 millimeter volcano with PLA, like, and so it allows you to experiment and do all sorts of crazy things. Like the way I see it is almost like a platform for insanity, like a platform to do this insane stuff with, man. Like there's really, like, they've given you basically almost like a magic wand, but no spell book. And it is up to you to take this wand and figure out what the hell you want to do with it. Like that's what I've gathered from it, man. It offers a lot, but it also has no defined lines or defined rules of its intention. That is for the user to decide.
Right. Yeah. It's a tool changer, not a 3D printer. It just happens to be able to 3D print, right?
Yes, and it's coming from a manufacturer that also is, 3D printing is their game, pretty much.
Right. Right. But that's where I was most interested in it. Seeing it 3D print and doing flexible and all these different materials all in the same print. That's cool and all. But really what I'm most interested in is tool design, and to see, I mean, this is kind of a foothold moment. And it's not going to be for everyone. No. And there's a lot of people making their own tool changer designs. Mm-hmm. But where's this ecosystem going to go now? I mean, and not everybody's going to be interested in doing all these different kinds of tool heads. But who's going to make what? What are we going to do next? Are we going to start cutting? Are we going to, I always tease everybody because I did aerosol cheese not too long ago. I was like, are we gonna make a pizza? Are we gonna, awesome. I mean, what are we gonna do with this thing? We can do whatever we want, and that's where I really want to get to.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm pumped. I definitely think that you are. I don't know too many people who actually have their hands on them, to be perfectly honest. I think Joe 3D Maker Noob got one. I believe he did. Yeah, he did a stream on it. But I will say that, like, out of the people that I've seen that have them, out of the people that I kind of watch and follow, that you and Joe would be the 2 people that I'm really familiar with that have them as of right now. And I'm excited to see what you come up with, man. Like, seriously, like, it's certainly, like, at the price. Like, okay, so the thing that's, like, also I want to, it's, like you said, it's not made for everyone. At that price point, it's not made for the same users that are buying, like, Ender 3s and stuff like that, typically. You know what I'm saying? Like, what you got is more of, like, the way I describe, or the way I see it is, when I was doing a lot of video game hacking and stuff like that, a lot of people were interested in the dev consoles, man, like dev ones, so that way they could develop their own stuff on it, and it gave you these extra tools, which isn't for everyone. You've got the users that, like, I'm fine with just my Xbox that does its thing, but then you've got the ones that are like, no, like, I want to make my own, like, skins, I want to make my own, emulation platform or whatever it is. Again, I know 2 very different things, but for the person that would be purchasing this machine, and I would say you are you're one of the exceptions, because I'm sure forking out, that's a lot of money, but for the most part, the people that would be buying it would be a business or like a company or a startup, somebody that's got a plan to do some kind of monetization with their end product, I would assume, to recoup some of that cost,
Absolutely. Yeah, they already have an idea in mind of what they're going to be using this motion system for doing a certain task, because it's heavy built, it's super repeatable. I mean, they could just let it sit there and churn 24 hours a day, constantly, and work for them. As an enthusiast, as somebody that's going to take it as a learning experience, probably not the most monetarily sound idea.
No,
but maybe we'll do something cool.
I'm pumped on it, man. Like, I'm a huge fan of, like, sometimes people that, like, why did you do that? And the answer kind of is, why not? Let's see what comes of it, man. So I'll definitely be following projects that you're doing with that. I haven't seen much after that post of the kind of crazy looking benchies. Have you gotten at the point now where you've been able to get like a benchy off of that's looking pretty decent? Or are you
Yeah,
still tuning?
I'm still tuning a lot, definitely. But now I'm actually trying to kind of gotten away from just PLA and try to get into some other trying to integrate different materials together just to see how they work. Because
Yeah.
I've done that a little bit before with Pilot and MMU2, using them together just to see how they react. But now we're actually talking about kind of, you know, uh, each one has their own dedicated head and we're building the same part. And that's
Mm-hmm.
going to get real interesting because each one has its own properties. Just talking about like PLA and PETG, you're going to have a different set of settings and kind of a different config for doing those two things. So my goal is to have a cool project that will integrate a couple of different kinds of materials and have it all set up and working in printing by Murph.
Oh,
And then
sick.
I'll bring the whole thing to Murph and we'll print out, I don't know, rubber, plastic somethings.
That's exciting.
We'll see what we come up with, but
That's
that's
awesome,
kind of
man.
the goal right now.
That's
So
cool. I'm super pumped to see the log and your tool changer in person because if I remember correctly, so again I didn't get to go this last year, but I think there was a couple at Murph last year, right? Is that correct? Like
absolutely
yeah, but they were part of the original. Most of them were part of the original testers, right? Because I don't think that they were
right.
really shipping. Yeah, so it'll be exciting for me to because there's when I saw it 2 years ago there was typically a pretty big crowd around it because everyone wanted to see this, this wand that they had brought in, and so yeah, it'll be really cool to see that machine and the log. So that is very exciting. But there's certainly a lot of other things that I could talk about, but I know it is kind of getting to the probably 50-minute mark. So let me at least. Let's see if there's much for Q&A. If not, we could chat for maybe another 10-15 minutes if you're fine with that.
That sounds good.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I will go ahead and for everybody who's been hanging out, if you guys have questions for either me or for Chris, let us know, and this will kind of be an open Q&A. I know that last time I was thinking to myself that there probably won't be that many questions, and there was quite a few once they got rolling, and I was like, oh my god, all right, slow it down, like So yeah, if you got any questions for me or for Chris regarding, I mean, really anything, it can be related to what we've talked about, or something else you want to know about us, or 3D printing related, now would be the time to put it in the chat. So out of curiosity, what was the total time from start to finish for that tool changer assembly?
That one I did it a little different. I kind of tried to chunk it out into like 2 and 3 hour increments, where normally I would just go like 6 or 7, on an afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
But I really wanted to get started on it, and it was around Christmas time, so things were kind of hectic. I want to say I had about 12 hours in it before I started printing.
Okay,
So
gotcha. It's a
it was
pretty
a
good
pretty
build.
good task.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the Folgertech FT5. That build was roughly 10 to 12 for me, and it was a little bit to do with the fact that unlike now, nothing was assembled, and I
Right.
remember. So the things I remember was nothing was assembled. I'm sure they've gotten better now, and I will not hold them to this. But 4 or 5 years ago, there was no labeling on any of their stuff. So it basically came out at a big pile of things, and I think I went and actually took a ice cube tray and measured out things and placed them accordingly, so that way they're all in their individual slots. And so I mean that was time consuming. Me trying to figure out what anything meant was time consuming. So at least now. So if it took you 12 hours now, that goes to show like it's a good build, man.
Yeah.
It's definitely a project. Someone's asking best way to port forward Octoprint. I feel like didn't you do a video on that?
Yeah, and I believe I've corresponded with this person in the comments before. Yeah, so the Octoprint, just I don't want to bore anybody with
Yeah.
networking stuff, but the problem with Octoprint is you got to jump through so many things with your internet provider. You got a modem, you got a router, all this stuff. You might have a firewall, you might have two firewalls.
Mm-hmm.
Your internet provider might not allow that. It's just there's so many little pieces to it. The best advice I can give you is take your cell phone off the wireless and test it. See if you can get there. See how far you can get. But it's not always the most straightforward process.
Gotcha. I'm sure there's also, again, like you mentioned too, depending on what router you have in your setup, the answer to that question could be very different in how you go about doing it. You know.
Absolutely.
So do you on a like on your machines, do you use Octoprint fairly often?
I use Octoprint as much as possible.
Yeah, I
Um, I,
love Octoprint, man.
yeah, it's made life so much easier. And I use Prusa Slicer, and it's integrated right in there. All I have to do is hit send G code, and it'll start printing it. I mean, it's such a time saver. So
So with the Prusa Slicer though, you still have it hooked up to a Pi, right? There's not a Pi integrated at this point in their boards.
right, yeah, it's still hooked up to a Pi.
Okay. And are you running? Because you were probably the first person I saw that was running multiple instances. Is that how you're typically running it? You got a Pi that's powering multiple machines?
Yeah. I usually run four, so I'm still using the 3B plus for most of it. But I'll use one for each USB port. I don't really use cameras much because I'm
Yeah.
down here all the time anyway.
Yeah, I can see you.
But yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll run four machines at once. I've got three or four setups like that, so I could be running 6 to 10 machines all at the same time if I'm really trying to get some stuff tested or
It's
whatever.
crazy.
Most of the time, I'll probably print on 2 or 3 printers a day.
Yeah.
Like on an average day. There's very rarely where I don't knock out some sort of 3D print trying to prepare for some content.
That's
So
awesome. I need to get better with that because believe it or not, as of lately, I've got like one machine going, man. But to be fair, I've got another machine going too, and it's usually a resin printer because I'm doing a lot more resin stuff lately. But
yeah,
yeah, as far as FDM goes, where before we moved, I had a much better like. I like my setup more now, but for the sake of printing, I had a rack system set up, and it was much easier for me to kind of interact with things. But because I've had to deal with space now, like the printers are moving too much, which like it makes it tough for me to like have things going a lot. Like the platform here is you can't see this at all, but the platform here is like where I record on. So like whatever I'm working with is there, and then the table behind me where there used to be 2 printers, it's now a freaking laser. Like so,
right.
like I just don't have space, man. I talked to a guy today that came in and he drove from the desert to work, and he's telling me that I was kind of talking about I've got this one room where I've got all this stuff, and he's like, oh, I've got like a 3-car garage, and I'm just like, God, like like goals. That's awesome. So
Yeah.
it's super cool, man. I've never seen like from one end to the other. How big is like the basement you're working with? Is it pretty large, or is it?
It's fairly large. Like it's pretty much just a rectangle. It's about the same size as the house. I have a pretty small house, but then the basement's about the same size. So it may be close to 800 square feet.
Okay.
So there's a lot of room down here.
No, that's my
But
whole
you still,
apartment.
yeah, well, you do like so many projects, and you have so many different things going on, and it's in a basement, so you have the furnace to deal with, so you can't record. You gotta
Oh
you
yeah,
gotta record in sections when it's cold out or when it's hot.
gotcha.
I mean, it's one thing after another. You got printers running that are loud or something like that. You gotta figure all these logistical things out to try to get videos done.
Got you. So space isn't an issue per se, but there is other elements that you have to consider. That with me,
Absolutely.
with me being inside where it's insulated and stuff, it's not necessarily the same. So there's good and bad as well.
Yeah,
Let's.
absolutely.
So Paulo wanted to say hi to Chris and wanted to thank him for the bonus video this week. Oh,
Yeah.
mentioning my Minibot Ultra project. Cheers. That's awesome.
Yeah, Paulo Blank is the man. I met him. I've talked to him for quite a while, but I met him at Earth. Uh, he came from Brazil and brought this really cool foldable printer design that like folds down into the size of a filament box. I mean, it is just
That's
killer, man.
insane. That's so cool.
Yeah. Paul is awesome.
Random, but Steven asks if you have kids.
If I have kids, I do not have kids.
Do you? I have a question. Do you guys have pets at all?
Yes, I have a dog.
Okay, because I don't think I've ever heard barking. Your dog's good, a good dog.
Yeah, he's pretty mellow for the most part. Like, I do a lot of streaming on Sunday, and
Yeah.
Amazon will show up
Oh
Sunday.
yeah.
But that's the only time you ever hear Hank in the background
Gotcha.
is when Amazon shows up. He'll bark a little bit. It's funny, we were talking about the hang printer though.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the biggest challenges that I had because I had it at the beginning. I had it in the garage,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of where he walks through to go outside and come back. So he's just got a kind of free range. well, while I was trying to record that, he kept walking into the shot.
Oh
You know,
no. You're like, Hank, get
so
out of the shot. I love
so
the name,
so
Hank, dude.
there's segments of that video where he's just standing there, or he'd be tripping over one of the lines or whatever, you know.
Is
But
he bigger or smaller dog? What kind of dog?
he's just a mix, but he's about
Uh-huh.
70 pounds, so he's
Oh,
good
that's a big
size.
dog, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's my. I've got a Delilah is my mixed dog, and she's like lab pit shepherd mix of some sort, but like she's a pretty stocky girl, like probably 70 to 90 pounds as well. And I'm lucky because she always comes through, and there's cables. Like I've tried, like I'm trying to see how bad it looks behind me. It doesn't look terrible. It looks like crap in here. If you look around, it's like geez. But she's pretty good at like getting her steps over what's going on. And don't get me wrong, there's been a couple times where like like Aaron says treat, and she comes jolting out and just takes everything. I'm like no, but overall, like she's pretty good. So she's earned my trust with being around the printers and stuff like that with me. But that's awesome, man.
Nah,
Uh,
he just barrels through everything he can find, so I don't have that luxury. So.
older dog or younger dog?
I've had him forever. He's gonna like in March. He's gonna be 12.
Oh
So
wow, so yeah, he's definitely not a young. My girl's
yeah,
7 now, which is insane to think, but. Yeah, 12 is definitely like a senior-ish dog, you know.
yeah, he's slowing down a bit.
Yeah, that's well. It's maybe good for the all of your all of your things, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. Spends lots of time on the couch now, so I don't have to worry about it so much.
That's awesome,
But,
man. Well, if there is any other questions, I'll give another like minute or two here. But if not, we'll probably end the stream just because it is a Wednesday night and I'm actually working a show early in the morning, and you've got regular things to do with it being 10 o'clock there, and I'm sure that maybe the lady wants some time with you before before you go to bed, man.
yeah, she gets up at like 4 something in the morning, so she's long since in bed by
Oh,
now.
geez,
So
gotcha.
yeah,
That's rad, man. But yeah, I'm super excited for. I'm gonna be asking you probably a lot of questions regarding this board that I installed in the Ender 3. My I mean, again, everyone will see what I'm talking about in the video when it comes out. But like the install worked really well for me, and overall, like I've been super impressed. I held off on watching your video because I don't want it to affect what I say about it. I actually this just happened because I have a review coming out on Saturday, and another YouTuber got the same printer, and his review posted before mine, and I had some issues with the printer and some good things, and he had some stuff too, but I told him, I said, God, I really want to watch your review, but I'm not, because like, even if I don't, like, even if you don't intend for it to affect, like, I just, let me have, like, let's see, like, let me come up with my stuff, and then I'll compare it to your stuff, and let's see, like, where it was the same, and where we had differences, and, like, what the differences were.
yeah. No, that's a great point. I try if somebody's reviewed it, I try not to let that review. I don't want to see it. I want to do all my own thoughts
Yes.
and all that stuff. And
Yep.
the worst part about me is when I'm thinking about a review, I'm thinking about stuff that really annoyed me or that I really liked, but I never consider safety. And like almost never. And so
Yep.
I'll do my review and it'll be up. And I'm like, yeah, it's pretty sound. And then I'll watch their review and they're like, well, this isn't safe. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I probably should have mentioned that.
I,
But
yep.
I just, there's so many of them that you should probably, think about grounding or if it's got exposed mains or something like that.
Yeah.
You'd probably think a little more about that. But it seems like I always miss that part.
That is something that I would agree with myself as well, and I've tried like when I talked about not in all of them, but there was definitely like one resin video where I said, you want to be in like a well ventilated area, you want to have gloves on, and like it was watching a video like Angus did one about like SLA printing where he really talked about like, hey, like this stuff is not good to be around, like make sure you're using it properly. And after
Right.
watching that, I like almost was just like, oh shit, like but I think in my head that, and maybe this is a flaw, but I assume that the people that are watching like know a little bit, or like would take some of that into consideration, where they're not really looking at me to like make sure that it's QC passed and stuff like that, and more like, hey,
Right.
this is cheap, how does it operate? So, but again, that could be an assumption on my part that's flawed. But yeah, I could understand, and I've definitely seen people where they're like, yeah, well, this thing doesn't have good relief, so it's gonna probably come off. And I look at it, I'm like, no shit, they're probably right, like,
Yeah.
so that's certainly a thing. But yeah, it's definitely something where I try my best. Where I know that if I've either got it, I'm going to review it currently, or it's something that I plan on getting. Like I'll try not to watch it just because I don't want to have it affect that. So we'll wrap
Right.
up here in a second. The only last one is Aaron says, "Can either of you give us a preview on upcoming projects?" And I can, for me, I can say that what's a big project? Okay, so a couple of projects in the pipeline for me is one. I want to make a camera slider. I was looking at purchasing one and saw the price tag and thought to myself, no, I've got a Delta printer that's basically been ready to be a sacrificial lamb for a very long time. So I'm gonna rip out those extrusions and create some kind of a camera slider, which I will. That'll be a project. Um, and then what else? I've got some big stuff coming up, but well, I was talking to you. I might potentially be having some stuff where I do a little bit of drone footage as well as maybe implementing some 3D printed parts on the drone. So that might be something coming up as well. Time frame, no idea. Life's crazy, and I kind of try to take it a week at a time. I've got already a few videos that I've been working on in the pipeline, if you will. But those are two things that I know are on my list. Believe it or not, I've got a list of videos. Do you do this? So, I've got a list whenever I come up, like I'm out in the world and I think of an idea and I'm like, that would be a great video. I've got a list probably of, I kid you not, like 70 video ideas, man. And realistically, a lot of them I don't go to, like, because most every week I'm like, either it's a review or I've already got this thing in the pipeline. I more go to it when it's like, I don't know what I want to do a video on. And then I'll scroll through it and be like, oh shit, like that's a really good one. Do you ever keep a
Yeah.
list?
I do. I have a really long list, and I have cherry picked them all on degrees of difficulty. So all the stuff that I
Smart.
really have left on the list would take like 3 weeks to do.
That's really
One
smart.
of these days I'm gonna let it go and not make a video every week, and I'll take 3 or 4 months and just make one video a month, and they're going to be just really long involved videos, because I'd love to do some of these projects, but I can't do that project and
It's
and get a
not
video out
realistic. Yeah.
on whatever board came out
Yeah.
recently. So I have a ton of ideas, just no time to get any of it done, unfortunately.
From the like the viewer standpoint or the consumer of content standpoint, I understand like what there's the channels that I watch like that produce regular content, right? I expect it. I'm like, okay, cool, let's see what they came out with this week, great. And when they do big projects, I'm super bummed, man. Like, like the Saturday hits or the Wednesday hits, and I'm like, oh, dude. But then when the big project comes out, I'm pumped, and I'm like, yeah, this is sick. Like usually the content's good, but this is next level shit. So like I think that you're like the response would probably be similar to that. Like people would be bummed, dude, especially because of like how active you are and like consistent with like the streams and the videos every single week. But I do think that like if you put a lot of time and energy into a project, like people would totally dig it when it finally came out.
Yeah, and it's one of those things too. It's like, a lot of projects you never know how they're going to turn out when you start. So
Oh
you might
no.
you might go 2-3 weeks into a project and you end up with a pile of garbage.
Yep.
But I'm going to show it anyway.
That's
That not everything
awesome.
works out right.
Yeah.
Here's the footage. It didn't go so well.
Yeah, we talked about that too when it comes to your live streaming, and like one thing that you have to get over with live streaming is the idea that if you screw up, that's a bad thing. Like there's nothing bad. That's good. That shows that you're human and that the viewer should not feel discouraged if they try to follow your tutorial or do something similar to you and fail, because you failed. And to me, like failure is not something not working correctly. Failure is giving up. Like if you try and you keep trying, but again, I don't want to say that either, because there are things where I think that you just need to throw in the towel. Like you got
Yeah.
you got what you needed to out of that project, and it maybe wasn't what you had started off with, and maybe it ended up being this pile of garbage, but that pile of garbage gave you so much insight to things you didn't know, or things that you got to experience. So yeah, I think that that's awesome, and definitely sharing your failures is positive for like multiple reasons.
Absolutely. And if there's one thing that I can communicate to anybody that watches YouTube or watches my channel or watches anyone create content, you're always going to have people that just want to agitate you in comments or whatever. That's just what they enjoy to do.
Yep.
But the point I like to get across is I don't always know what I'm doing when I set out to do one of these things. I started completely from scratch. I had no idea what was going on. I just went through it as good as I could. Uh, and I tried to convey that in the video, and that's what I always want to convey.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just some guy. You can do this too if you put enough time in it and you scrap it together. You can do this.
Yeah.
But I'm always welcome to comments. Somebody that knows more than me, please tell me that, well, you could have done this and you could have done that. And oh, by the way, there's here's a cool link. That's how I learn, and that's what makes the next one better.
Yeah.
So then you tell me something, then I can tell someone else that doesn't know that.
I,
And that's how we evolve, man. And that's what's so cool about being on YouTube.
Constructive criticism or just insight or recommendations is good, and I think that as people, like, everyone should welcome that in life, whether it's through content creation or not other things. But again, there's a pretty definitive line between you're trying to be helpful and you're trying to be malicious, and
Absolutely.
I don't know, like, for me, I've got a pretty big, like, zero tolerance. Like, if someone's coming on my channel and blatantly being rude, like, I block. Like, I don't care. Like, I'm here to, like, help people have fun, inspire maybe through, like, a crazy project that I work on one day. But, like, if you're just here to, like, be negative, I just, there's plenty of other people that, will entertain you. But I don't even like giving them the time of day, man.
Absolutely.
This is my haven for my people. Like, if you want to come and hang out, be here. But if you don't, like, just don't, man.
Yeah, and I have been I have to say on top of that, I've been super fortunate on YouTube. Everybody is usually always really positive, and thanking me for the help and giving me good suggestions for other topics and stuff. I have had very, very little negativity on YouTube, and that it's been great, because I mean that just makes you want to keep going on. So
yeah, it gives you that motivation to keep going. The people.
Right.
So awesome. Okay, well, I think on that note we'll wrap it up, because it's gone I think a good enough time now. And yeah, this was awesome. Thank you so much, Chris, for coming on and sharing. I definitely feel like I know a bit more now about the various. You're even more knowledgeable with your boards than I thought you were. I didn't realize that you'd gone through, like, everything, because I basically went, like, Ramstar Arduino, and, like, here I am now. Like, I don't know what happened between the whole intermediate thing, but I was like, yeah, my printers are working. And yeah, thanks for coming on and sharing more info. I feel like most everyone knows who Chris is and is probably following his channel. If you're not, go over and do it as soon as this ends. I will absolutely have his link to his channel will be in this live stream. It is in this live stream. It will also be when the video goes live, posted, will be there as well. And for anybody that is maybe jumping in late, this will also be available in audio format only. I will delete the first 10 minutes where the audio wasn't working, and I'm sorry about that, Chris. I don't know what happened on my end, but
No worries,
I'm
man.
super happy
just
we got
happens.
it. Yeah. So I will cut out the 10 minutes of me talking and Chris being incredibly silent, and that will be on Spotify and on iTunes as well as Google. So that way, if you want to listen to it, and it will also have his info as well in there, so that way you can follow him as well. So again, huge thank you, and I don't know if you want to say like a outro as well type thing.
No, man. Again, thanks for having me on here. It's been an honor. I'm sure this is going to be huge someday, and I will have been the second one, so I'm going to be super proud of that. And I believe, I mean, if you're putting this out as a podcast form, I think this is the first time I will have been in podcast form.
Oh, snap, man.
So there you go.
That's exciting, bro. That's super exciting.
Yeah, but thanks again for having me on.
Yeah.
Man. I've been talking to you for years now.
Oh, yeah.
We very rarely get to converse other than, short messages here and there. So
I was stoked, man. When I reached out, because I reached out to Chris in December asking, right when I had basically scheduled this whole thing, and was like, oh, dude, like, I had a bunch of people that I was considering, and I was like, nah, Chris, like, you came up, like, almost right away, dude. I was like, I know that we haven't talked much over, like little passing stuff like that, but I was like, nah, Chris is an awesome guy. I would love to have him on, like, for his, like, just knowledge and his, like, super laid back, like, awesome guy. So, thank you for, also doing this and being so on top of it and being here. So it's greatly appreciated, and again, I'm super excited to see all the crazy awesome things that you're coming out with, and also to hopefully be hanging out with you, man, in just 2 months here. So that's that's exciting, bro.
We'll see what comes up.
All right, man. Well, again, thank you everyone for tuning in, and if you missed it, it will be available after the fact. And on that note, we will see you guys next time. Bye, everybody.